Welcome back into Quick Kick Around the Pitch. We did Group A, Group B previews yesterday for Euro 2024. It is today time for Group C and D. And what teams do we have in those groups? In Group C, we have Slovenia, Denmark, Serbia, and England. And in Group D, we have Poland, Netherlands, Austria, and France. I think both groups are very interesting. Both groups have widening varieties of things happening in them. But let's start off, we'll just get straight into it. We'll start off with Group C, which is my group of slow. If you remember from the previous episode, kind of giving each group a title, kind of give you an idea of what I feel about the group. So Group C is my group of slow. By group of slow, I mean we are not going to see high-scoring games in this group. We are going to see 1-0 games. We're going to see 1-1 games. We may get, a 2-1 game mixed in there. I'm not expecting a lot of scoring from this group, even though one of the teams in it is very attacking heavy. I'm not expecting a ton of goals because a lot of these teams are defensive minded. So let's start off with Slovenia. Slovenia has qualified for their first major tournament that is either Euros or World Cup since the 2010 World Cup, when they were put in a group with England and the United States. The fourth team in that group was Algeria. They did not make it out of that group. Slovenia kind of feels like an underdog story getting here because, this is a very young team, but it's also mixed in with some very old players. You don't have that mid-group that have been around for a while, but they're not over the edge career-wise, if that makes sense. I'm going to be interested to see how Slovenia plays because I think they're already on the back foot talent-wise, and I think that's going to make it more difficult for them in this group. This group is one of the more difficult, I think, at this Euro. It's obviously not a group of death, but I think there's a lot more questions about it just because some of the teams in there, like Slovenia, we don't know much about them. I'm going to be really interested to see how they play. Like I said, their first major tournament in 14 years, their first Euro in 24. They've only qualified for one Euro before, and that was in 2000. Now, this team, you don't have stacked talent in here. Of course, you've got Jan Oblak, who is your captain, Atletico Madrid goalkeeper. He's going to keep them in games. You got Benjamin Sesko, the RB Leipzig striker. He's only 20 years old, but I think he's proven that he can do it on the international level for Slovenia. Just getting him here says enough. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they play out. I'm not expecting a ton from them, but I'm still excited to see how it goes. So we'll still do a projected starting 11 for me at least, but through post-editing yesterday, I kind of noticed that it is a little bit hard to read on the tactics board, the writing and the ink. So I just decided we're going back to graphics. Tactics board will come back out later in the tournament. It still will be there, but let's get to a starting 11 for this Slovenia team. It is a 4-4-2. I have Jan Oblak starting in that, of course, the goalkeeper. And then you get to this back line. There's some talent in there. You got to somewhat search for it. But, you got Bajol, who played at Udinese this season. I think I know he's 25, but I feel like he's technically an up-and-coming talent. I'm just excited to see where this team goes because then you move up into that midfield. You get some good players mixed in there. They're players that probably not a ton of people have heard of. I think there are quite a few good players in here, like Petar Stovakovic, Sampdoria from this season. I think he's going to be an interesting talent, of course. And then at the top of those two, you got Benjamin Sesko, which I already talked about. 20-year-old Leipzig striker. I am excited to see what he does on the international stage, because I have a feeling he could be really good for this Slovenia team. So given that, we're going to move on from Slovenia. We're going to move on to Denmark. Now, Denmark, the 1992 champions, and of course, if you know your history, which I'm assuming you don't, but 1992, Denmark technically did not qualify for the Euros that year, but with the impending, well, it happened by that point, but an extra qualifying, because it was Yugoslavia were disqualified from the tournament, I believe. And of course, Yugoslavia, Soviet Union, all that was all falling apart at those times. And because Yugoslavia fell apart and turned into, 8 different countries or something like that, it feels like they were just disqualified from the tournament. And basically any of the teams that did not qualify in the original qualifying stage were put into a bracket, obviously an 18 bracket, and Denmark made it. They went on a miraculous run, made it to the final, won it against Germany. We are now here with this Denmark team, and I feel like it's a team in transition. This team still has a decent amount of the old guard, but there's still a lot of players in here that are coming into the squad for some of the first times, and this is going to be their squad come Euro 2028. This feels like a transition year for Denmark, and I think that probably hurts them in the end in this tournament. Like, you can look at your goalkeepers. I mean, you got Kasper Schmeichel. He's the 37. He's got 100 caps. But then you look at, one of the guys that replaced him at Leicester City, Mads Hermansen. He's 23 and has no caps and got called up. He's probably not going to see playing time, but I mean, he's still quite good. Andreas Christensen, he's basically at the top form of his career right now at the age of 28. He's probably going to have a big tournament for Denmark. And then you move on, like you get Christian Eriksen. Of course, Euro 2020, the first game for Denmark, he goes down and he basically dies on the pitch of a heart attack. Back to life. Obviously does not play the rest of the tournament or the rest of 2021, I think. He's still playing, which is absolutely outstanding. He makes it back to the Euro. It does feel like this probably his last major tournament. Probably, I don't know. But that, of course, is something to watch. But that's another player kind of in transition. You're 32, 129 caps. It kind of feels like we're doing a changing of the guard here a little bit. And then like you move up a little. The forwards, I think, are a more interesting position because you do have a lot of youth in here. Like you got Rasmus Højlund, 21. You do have like a Kasper Dolberg who's been around for a while, but he's still 26. You have a Jakob Brun Larsen at Burnley. He's 25. So it really is a mix of young and old in the squad. It's going to be interesting to watch this Denmark team because they're the only Scandinavian side that made this tournament, even though Norway might be one of the better ones that didn't make it, which is a shame that we don't see Erling Haaland at this top level. But, I mean, if you can't qualify, you can't qualify. It's really as simple as that. I think the biggest hope for them in this tournament is basically just playing a very counter-attacking style of football with that 3-5-2 formation. You're going to just try to get goals off the counterattack. I don't really know any other ways. I mean, it's going to be really difficult. I think their best hope probably is making it to the knockout stage. And even then, with this group, I don't know if they can do that. So given that, starting in that, of course, Kasper Schmeichel. I don't see anybody taking that from him. Of the 3 people called up, I don't see either of them taking it from him. I expect him to be the starter. I have Rasmus Christensen starting at the right back. I mean, it really could be a few other players, but I have it being him. I think he's had the better season coming in. I think he's the more fit player coming in. I have Andreas Christensen and Joachim Andersen starting as your center backs. I think that's going to be an interesting pairing. I don't know if it's their best pairing, but I feel like that's what they go with. And Joachim Mahel, the Wolfsburg left back, I expect him to be starting there. In your midfield, I have Pierre-Emerick Højbjerg, Christian Nodegaard, and Matthias Jensen. I think that's the best midfield you can probably put together, even though, you do have Christian Eriksen there. I honestly don't expect him to be starting, if I'm honest. I would be very shocked if he gets starting. It seems like he's more of a super sub type player coming into this tournament. And then we move up to our top 3. I have Andreas Slav Olsen, I should say. He's a 24-year-old. I think he's going to be a really good player. I have Rasmus Højlund up top, and I have Jonas Wind as your left winger. I think this is going to be a very interesting team because it's a team in transition, like I said, and it's going to be interesting to see how the young play with the old. Moving on from Denmark, it is time to take a look at the Serbian national team. This is a team that has been qualifying for recent tournaments. I mean, they qualified for the 2022 World Cup. They haven't been here on the Euro stage since 2000 when they made the quarterfinals. So a big moment for Serbia to return to the national stage. And let me say, they got some really good players in here, but I do think they are kind of at a disadvantage, I'd say, because although they have some really good players, I don't think they have the talent enough to compete with some of the other teams in this group, mainly Denmark and England. So I think they're mostly looking at a possible 3rd place in this group. But, I mean, this is still a very interesting team, to say the least. Like I said, they qualified for the World Cup. It wasn't an outstanding performance, but it wasn't great either. There really is, I think there's a lot more questions with this team than there is any other in this group, just because, like I said, they do have some really good talent. I don't know what to expect with them using it. I think there are a lot of questions defensively. I think that is a huge question throughout this group. I think for all 4 teams, I think all their defense back lines are quite questionable, to say the least. I'm because Serbia runs with a 3-4-2-1, which is a somewhat more attacking style formation. Having 3 center backs, and if you don't trust them, you don't trust them. So it does worry me a little bit for the Serbian team. But their midfield, I think they got some really good talent in the midfield, and I think their forwards are quite good also. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this Serbian team plays out. So given that, I already mentioned they run the 3-4-2-1. Let's take a look at my projected starting 11. I have Milinkovic-Savic, and of course that is Vanja, the goalkeeper for Torino. I have him starting in net for this team. I don't see Georgi Petrovic getting a start, given he only has 3 caps. Predrag Rakovic from Mallorca. Yeah, I think there can be a case made, but I think Milinkovic-Savic makes the start. Just, he is a bit younger. Yes, he has less caps, but I think he's the better goalkeeper. Your 3 center backs for this Serbian team, to me, is Milinkovic, the Fiorentina player. You got Velkovic from Werder Bremen, and then you got Palovic from Red Bull Salzburg. This back line was a really struggle for me to put together. It really does worry me because, I mean, this is the strongest back line they have, but the talent truly isn't really there with it. I think Milenkovic is your best center back here. I mean, he is 32, so I'd expect him to be the best one. He's the most experienced, but that having him and Palovic on both sides of the center backs, with Palovic being 31, that does worry me a tiny bit. But moving on, we'll get to our 4 in the midfield. As your wing backs, I have Zilovic and I have Kostic. I mean, Filip Kostic is a very good in that position. I'm going to be very interested to see how he plays with this team. I'm excited to see how it works out for him. And then you got Nemanja Gulevi, the Sevilla player in the midfield. And you got Lukic also there, Sasha Lukic from Fulham. I have him there. Now, if we keep moving up your attacking midfielders, I have the other Milinkovic-Savic in this team, Sergej. And then I have Dusan Tasic as your captain in that other attacking midfield. And, of course, you got to have Alexander Mitrovic up at the top. His days at Fulham are gone as he's now in Saudi Arabia, but it seems like he's still scoring goals over there. So I am 100% expecting him to be at the top for this Serbian team. With Serbia over with one more team in this group, and that is, of course, England. Now, I could do just a full episode on England, but I'm going to keep it brief because I do have a lot of feelings about this team. They're, like I said, they're the favorites coming into this tournament. I very much don't think they should. There's a lot going on here. So I've said it already, and I'll keep saying it. My biggest worry is this back line. Luke Shaw, he's injured. He may not play the first 2 games. It sounds like he will be back at some point in this tournament, but he is not going to be starting at the beginning. We also lost Harry Maguire with injury. Even though he isn't great at the club level, he always shows up on that international level. And it truly just doesn't feel like the top talent is here for this back line. It really worries me because back lines win this tournament. It's not the attacking side. It's good defensive play and stopping goals from being scored. It's just, it really is worrying for me. I'm the defensive depth here is not good. It is not good at all. It worries me a lot. I don't know. I really don't know with this team. Like I said, I am so worried about this team. A lot of people are hyping them up. I truly don't see it. I think they should be the 3rd or 4th favorites. I don't think they should be number 1. I think their chance of winning was 2020, and they lost on penalties in the final. I can't doubt the midfield and the forwards. We got some outstanding talent in there. I'm really excited to see some of these players play, like Eze. I'm excited to see what he does. I know Cole Palmer, he's young, but I want to see what he does. Of course, you have Harry Kane up there. He's going to score in this tournament, and probably a lot. You have, of course, Phil Foden in there too. He hasn't been the most in form, but he still makes the squad. The one that is also missing here is Jack Grealish, which I still am a bit confused by, but I do have to give credit to Southgate. He picked players by the form they are in right now, not the form they were in months ago. Jack Grealish's form has not been great coming into this tournament. It's the same reason why James Maddison isn't here. So I give credit to Southgate on that. So given that you've seen this, it is time to now look at my projected starting 11 for this England side. I have, of course, Jordan Pickford starting in that. Both of these, Dean Henderson and Aaron Ramsdale, both seem awful at the international level. It just, I don't know. Pickford just comes out of nowhere. He has an okay season at Everton, and then it just, I don't know. He becomes a different player come tournament time for England. My back four, I have Walker, I have Stones, I have Merk Guehi, and I have Alexander-Arnold starting in the left back position just because I don't know what they're going to do with Luke Shaw. I don't know. I really don't know. I think Alexander-Arnold fits more in the midfield, but we just don't have depth, and I think he's going to end up playing that left back position. I'm worried about throwing Kobe Manu in there in this midfield. I think they're going to do it. He did kind of have a stinker versus Iceland, and, most recent impressions are the most important ones, but he's going to be in there. I think Declan Rice is in that midfield. And, of course, Jude Bellingham is going to be your 10 here. The season he had, he 100% is going to be your 10. And then as your attackers, I have Saka, even though, I don't know. He worries me. He really does. The one that doesn't worry me is Harry Kane. He only worries me in finals when he doesn't show up. And then Phil Foden, I have him on the left. I think this is the best squad that England could put out there. Is it a tournament-winning squad? I don't think so. Honestly, I don't. I don't know. This team is just really worrying. I'm not sure how this is going to go. It's going to be very interesting to see how this England team plays out. This is either ending we're almost to 60 years of hurt. So we're at 58 right now, I believe, since 1966. Can we end the 58 years of hurt and never? But I'm sure we're going to stop the dreaming. I doubt it, because I just don't see England bringing football home this summer. Group C gets kicked off on Sunday, June 16th. Slovenia and Denmark kick it off at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, with Serbia and England to follow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for match day 1 of that group. Match day 2 of that group will be Thursday, June 20th. Slovenia, Serbia is at 9 a.m. Denmark, England to follow at high noon Eastern Time, of course. And then group play ends with match day 3 on Tuesday, June 25th. Denmark, Serbia kick off at 3 p.m. along with England and Slovenia kicking off at the same time. So given that, we'll move on from Group C and let's move on to Group D. So to start off Group D, we start with Poland, the neighbors of Germany, of course. This whole group is neighbors of Germany. If we really look at it, Austria's in there. You got France in there. You got the Netherlands in there. And, of course, you have Poland in there. A Poland team, I don't think this is a great team for them, honestly. Robert Lewandowski's still there, of course. This is probably his last tournament. Wojciech Szczesny, probably his last tournament also. But, I mean, they're looking down the barrel of a 4th group stage exit in 5 tournaments. That's just simple as that. I don't think this Poland team truly has, a ton of talent, which is, quite disappointing. But nonetheless, this team, I don't think the talent's there to get them to move on any farther than the group stage. I mean, you do have some good players mixed in there. You're searching for talent, and I just don't think that they truly have it. Basically as simple as that. I'm excited to see what Jakob Mulder does, the Brighton player. He's only 25, has 21 caps. I'm excited to see what he does. But with news just recently coming out that Robert Lewandowski isn't even going to be in the starting lineup for their first game because of an injury. That does kind of worry me that he may be out all 3 games. And then obviously that is quite a big problem for Poland because that is your best player you are losing. So yeah, that's just very worrying team to me. I think they're destined for bottom of this group. I think it's just as simple as that. So given that, let's take a look at the projected starting 11 I have with them. They run a 3-5-2, so you're going to have 3 center backs in there. You got Bednark from Southampton. You have Dalkowitz from Hellas Verona. And then you got Keyword from Arsenal. You move into your wing backs. You got Frankowski from Lens and Zelowski from Roma. Both had pretty good seasons this year. I'm excited to see what both of those players do. Then you get into your midfield of center midfielders. You got Slits from Atlanta United. So yes, an MLS player I do have projected as being in the starting 11. You got Jakub Mulder, like I mentioned earlier, from Brighton. And then you got Peter Zielinski, the Napoli player. Again, I think you're just struggling to find talent here, honestly. And then you get to your top 2. I have Lewandowski in there because he is going to start at some point in this tournament, I would think. But if they don't have him, it's over for them. And then you got Sawirski, the Hellas Verona player. I have him rounding out the starting 11 for this team. So given that, we will now move on just straight into our next team, which is the Netherlands. I am very interested to see how this Netherlands team plays out because Ronald Koeman is not the best manager, if we're honest. He likes to falter with top talent. That worries me because if he was not the manager, if we had Louis van Gaal as manager of this team, I honestly do think they would be a dark horse to win the tournament. Ronald Koeman, I honestly don't. I don't. His managing style worries me. And like I said, I really don't want to hate on this team because I want them to be a dark horse. I don't think that they can do it. They lack, first-rate attackers. If you look at when I get there, the projected starting 11, the top isn't great. If they concede early, that's a big problem for them. Big problem. And that is not also going to be great. I think goalkeeping, that's a bigger problem than I think a few people are talking about. I think they have their goalkeeper set, but just so few caps between the 3 that they brought. That does worry me a little bit, but I mean, who knows what could happen there. And I think that they'll still get to knockout stages. It's a question of how long they last there, I think, for me. So given that, we will now take a look at the projected from me starting 11 for this Dutch team. I honestly don't know who they go with in net. I'm going with Mark Fluken, the Brentford keeper. I think Bart Verbruggen could also be there. I really don't know what direction they go because I think it is one of their weaker positions here. As they run the 3-5-2, they're going to have 3 center backs, Ake, Van Dijk, and Geertruida. I think those are 3 pretty set players that they will be starting. The player, I'm so glad that he made the squad, and he is most likely going to be starting, at least in my mind. I think he will be starting. Mickey Van de Ven, he is just, what a player he is. I talked about him all year. I love his style of play. He is so fast. I think he's going to be a big help on this team, especially playing a wingback position. I can't wait to see what he does, because it may be the difference between the Netherlands advancing and not, honestly. The style he plays, I'm excited to see what he does with this Netherlands team. And then on the other side, I do have Dumfries starting, the Inter Milan player. Their back line, like I said, I think that's very good. Obviously, goalkeeper is a question, but the back, if you want to consider it the back five with the wing backs, I think they're very good. It's when you get up front is where I start personally having questions. You got Schouten, you got Veerman, and you got Renges in there. And then at the top two, I have Memphis Depay and Cody Gakpo. They don't have the attacking power. Your options basically coming off the bench, I guess I would say, are Steven Bergwijn, the former Tottenham player, Wout Weghorst, Daniel Malin, and Brian Bobbery. I don't know where your goals are going to come from, honestly, from any of those players. I get Brian Bobbery. He's young. He's 22. He's probably the future of this Dutch team. I just don't think it's there now. Honestly, I don't. I'm going to be excited to see how this team plays, but I just wish that they would end up going farther in this tournament, but they probably just will not. So given that, it is time to move on to our next team in this group, and that is the Austrian national team. This Austrian team, I'm excited to see what they do, because I think they outperformed what they could have done, or what they were expected to do, I should say, in Euro 2020. They, of course, made it to the last 16. I think that they have a good manager in Ralf Rangnick. I think they got some young talent mixed in there. The worrying thing for me is, once again, kind of just like the Dutch, once you get up front, there isn't much really attacking wise, and again, that worries me. I know this tournament is all about defensive play and all that, and I've preached that, but at some point you still got to find a goal, and it does worry me a little bit with just the talent that Austria doesn't have. I think they are a potential dark horse in this tournament, just given the manager, Ralf Rangnick. He can find a way to win these type of games. He plays that Genga pressing type football. They run a 4-3-3. So, that alludes to a more attacking style. Does it end up with something? I don't know. But the group they're in, I don't think helps them. But I still do think they have a chance of finding a way to advance in this tournament. So, given that, we'll take a look at what I have projected as their starting 11 going into this tournament. I went with Patrick Pens in net here, the Brøndby keeper. 27, only 6 caps, but I still am kind of expecting to see him in net compared to Heinz Linder, who I think is his main competition here. Your back four, I have Stefan Poch, Maximilian Wulber, Kevin Denzel, and then you have Philip Nguyen. I have those at the back four. I think that it's pretty much a set back four there. I expect that to be what the starting lineup is. I think it starts getting tinkered with here in the midfield with your three. I personally have it as Seiwald, Lammer, and Schmidt. I could see you throwing in like a Seidel possibly, even though he only has 3 caps. I could see you throwing in a Kynes. I don't know what they go with here. And then as your top 3, I have Sabitzer, Baumgartner, who I'm excited to see both of those players play, and Gregorich, the 30-year-old. I'm expecting to see him play up top for this Austrian team. So given that, we will move on to our final team in this group, and that is, of course, the French. The France national team. They are, otherworldly. The talent just oozes out of this team. They got knocked out in the round of 16 in 2020, but they were finalists in 2016 in their host tournament. They won it in 2000, and that's just looking at, of course, the Euros. If you look at the World Cup, of course, they were finalists in 22. They made it all the way to the end, the final episode of Quick Kick Around the Pitch in Qatar. They obviously won it in 2018 in Russia. Didier Deschamps, still the manager, and I still think he has a very good team. This team is very strong. They're the second favorites to win this tournament. I think they should be the favorites. This team, it's just filled with talent. The only weakness I truly see in this team is probably a right back. I personally see Jules Koundé as more of a center back. Jonathan Klaus, is he your right back? I guess he is, but that just doesn't seem like an elite right back you would see for the French team. That's basically what I'm saying. Your midfield, it's stacked with players. Camavinga and Tuchemi. Real Madrid already have them, and French have them too. And then you throw Rabiot, Conte, Fofana in there. That is just an outstanding midfield. And of course, you get into the forwards. It starts and ends with Kylian Mbappe, the new Real Madrid player, the best player in the world probably. There's no doubting it. This team is destined for a run in this tournament. I don't know how far it goes. Like I said, I personally have them as the favorites in this tournament. I don't think it should be England. I think France has the better team, and I would expect them to show that here in this tournament. So given that, let's take a look at my projected starting 11 for this French team. It's another 4-3-3. This is what Deschamps has worked with. I'm expecting it again. Mike Manigan in net. This is going to be his first major tournament after Hugo Lloris retired from international play. Of course, he is still playing in the MLS with LAFC. I expect him to be your starter. If you move into your defenders, I have Theo Hernandez at the left back. I then move into our center backs, and that's where I have Koundé and Umendekdo. And then, like I said, right back, I guess it's close. I really don't know. Is that who you go with? Or do you move Koundé into that right back and Konate into the center back? I don't know what France does here. You move into your midfield. You got Tuchemi, Griezmann, and Rabiot. I think that's your strongest one there. There can be an argument for Camavinga being thrown in there. I would 100% understand that. And then you move up top. I have Dembele, Giroud, and Mbappe, of course, to round it out. That's what I'm expecting to see from Didier Deschamps coming up. Group D gets kicked off on Sunday, June 16th. Poland, Netherlands are the 9 a.m. Eastern time game on that day. Austria, France will not start action until Monday, June 17th, when they kick off at 3 p.m. We move on to match day 2 of this group. It will be Friday, June 21st. Poland and Austria kick it off at 12 p.m. Netherlands, France, a lot of people will be looking forward to that one at 3 p.m. And the group ends with match day 3 on Tuesday, June 25th. France, Poland, Netherlands, Austria, both 12 p.m. Eastern, high noon kickoffs. So given that, that is going to wrap up the Group C and Group D previews for this episode of Quick Kick Around the Pitch. Tomorrow, we round it out with E and F. A lot more intrigue there, so make sure you tune into that. Thank you so much for watching. If you just stumbled across this video, more are coming out soon, so make sure you click the subscribe button, click like if you like this video, tell all your friends, and we will be back tomorrow for the final group preview of Euro 24 here on Quick Kick Around the Pitch.